Hi, everyone. I'm Dr. Lisa Palmer, Dr. Mama Bear, coming to you live on PMS, PCOS, and protection. Sorry about the delay. I was chatting it up with Dr. Jason Dean, and then I was like, oh my gosh, it's time for the live. So I am here, guys, ready to hang out with you. Hi, Jennifer. Hi, Emily. Hi, Carol. Let me know if you guys can hear me okay. Let me know if you can hear me in Facebook land. Let me know if you can hear me on Instagram. Hi, Alyssa. Let me know if the sound's okay, if this mic is behaving. Tiffany says she can hear me on Twitch, so that's awesome. So coming to you live on Facebook, Instagram, Twitch, Palmer Natural Health. So I'll keep it PG. Mama Bear Live and Brave TV. So lots of good channels, lots of good ways to get content. Hi, Tanya. Hi, Jen. Hi, Jody. Awesome. Thank you guys for joining me. So I want to talk about female stuff, right? So as a woman, we are really strong. Like, ladies, you guys are like super strong. Mamas, you are super strong going through, being pregnant for 40 weeks, not 36 weeks, the 9-month thing. I don't know. 9 times 4 is 36, 40 weeks, 40 weeks, 40 weeks, sometimes 41 weeks. I went 41 weeks. So ladies, you can let me know if you have kids, how many weeks were you pregnant? I was pregnant 41 weeks, almost 42 weeks. Worked the entire time until the day that I delivered. And the morning I delivered, I woke up and I said, I'm not going in today. And that's the day my water broke and I went into labor. So really, women super strong. Guys are strong too, but women really strong since this is a female oriented live. Liz says she went 41 weeks. Wow. And the female body is just amazing, right? But what's crazy in our society is women get labeled, ladies, we get labeled with different conditions. We get labeled with certain letters. We get labeled with things that make us think that our body's malfunctioning, right? And so, I think one of the most common labels that women get, that I would say the majority of women get, is PMS. Like, oh, she's PMSing. She has PMS. It must be her time, right? Menstruation is the shedding of the uterine wall because there was no implantation. I'll keep this PG. There was no implantation of an egg and sperm, right? No baby was made. So the body says, okay, let's reset everything. Let's shed the uterine wall. It comes out in menses in a cycle, which corresponds to the moon cycle, the lunar cycle, which is very interesting. And so this is a normal cycle. Could be 28 days, could be a little bit shorter, could be a little bit longer, depending on you. And it's supposed to happen, right? And when should it happen? Well, there's some patients that have told me that their 8-year-old is going through puberty. There's some patients that have told me that their 10-year-olds have periods. So I was like 13, 14. So you guys can let me know how old you were when you got your period. I was in the Bahamas. What a horrible place to get your period, right? So like you're in a bathing suit and then you have your period for the first time. Anybody else think that they were bleeding to death? Like you just, even though your teachers or whoever in your life had tried to do the best they could in describing female processes, I think ladies, we could do a better job explaining to our daughters and explaining to our nieces, and friends can do a better job explaining these processes, and educators can do a better job. And so that's one of the reasons why I'm going live on this, is there's a lot of female functions, and even in the male world too, where it's not really explained very well. So one of the solutions is our lives here and our lives on the Palmer Natural Health channel, but also different events. And so PMS stands for premenstrual syndrome. So I'm hearing Alyssa was 11, Tiffany was 11, Jen was 11. Wow. Lori was 12. Christy went for one kid, 38 weeks and then 40 weeks. And then Patriotic Mama went 38 weeks and 39 weeks. Pure Awe, both kids were naturally born on their due dates. Wow, Pure Awe. Now I know why your screen name is Pure Awe, because I am in awe that you actually went into labor on the due dates. That is very rare. let's see, Robin was 13. Suzette, she was 12 and a half when she got her menstrual cycle. Christy was 12. And so Jean was 12. Jennifer was 12. So yeah, these are conversations that we need to have as moms. These are conversations we need to have as aunts. These are conversations we need to have as educators on what is normal female function. PMS is not normal. Premenstrual syndrome. Syndromes are not normal. You should not have a syndrome, right? And so what symptoms are linked to a syndrome? Breast tenderness, weight gain, bloating, cramping, heavy periods, light periods, emotional craziness, right? So premenstrual syndrome is common, but premenstrual syndrome is not normal. The drug companies will want you to buy Midol, right, for cramps, like it's like candy. Like people think for whatever reason, over the counter means safe. Over the counter does not mean safe. Over the counter just means they can sell it to you over the counter without a prescription, but it does not mean it comes without side effects. And so I think young women are just expecting to have PMS. When I tell an adult woman, hey, you do not have to have PMS, they kind of give me this like sideways look, like, are you serious? Like, I don't have to have PMS? Like, what do you mean I don't have to have PMS? Everybody has PMS. PMS is normal. I'm like, no. PMS is common. PMS is not normal. So for me, when I have my period, my uterine wall is shed. I don't know proper English, shed. And I carry on, right? It doesn't mean I turn into a monster. It doesn't mean that my boobs are tender. It doesn't mean that I have cramps. I don't have cramps. I don't have them, right? So when I have female patients who are like, oh, I had the worst cramps, I'm like, I don't understand. I understand what you're saying, but I haven't had cramps, right? So when the female cycle is working properly, there are no symptoms. You just have bleeding, right? You just have the shedding of the uterine wall, okay? If you have anything other than just shedding of the uterine wall, there is a cause to that. It could be a chemical, like chlorine is suppressing immune nervous system. Let's try English. It could be chlorine is suppressing endocrine system. That's the system looking for function, which can have a negative effect on the thyroid, which could cause you to skip periods. It could cause you to have too much function of your thyroid. So your hair might fall out, your eyes might bulge, you might speak super, 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 super fast. I was working with a patient today and she was like, talking really, really fast. And I'm like, something in her body is going too fast. I like to talk fast, but then there's some people that take it to like another level. And so something in their endocrine system, and the endocrine system consists of the pituitary gland, part of the brain called the hypothalamus, the thyroid gland, the ovaries for females, and the adrenals. For guys, it's the hypothalamus, the pituitary gland, the thyroid gland, the testicles, because remember, ovary tissue and testicle tissue is very, very similar. Ovaries descend, become testicles, right? And so those are the endocrine systems. And when things are in balance, they have proper function. Proper function for a female of childbearing age is to have a period every 28 to 30 days, depending on who you ask, right? If you do something to suppress your period, so as an athlete, it is really not fun to have your period when you are running in the South Florida heat, sweating. And not to be graphic, but just to be real, like I've had where you're running and your pad flips over and the sticky part is sticking to you and it's pulling on you and it's horrible. I've had teammates where they have tampons in and they're running and that doesn't stay in place, right? And so women are being told, they're being marketed to, that you don't have to have your period. It's inconvenient. It's messy. It's annoying. It's just like this annoying thing. Some kids of disabled or some parents of disabled kids are saying, we know that your kid is on the spectrum, or we know your kid is Down syndrome, or we know your kid is whatever, and it's inconvenient for your child of childbearing age to have a menstrual cycle. So what we're going to do is we're going to suppress your child's menstrual cycle, or they're an athlete, so we're going to suppress their cycle because it's just not convenient. or a woman that just doesn't like having a period. Because I don't really think, ladies, do we like having periods? I don't think anybody likes to have a period, right? So it's inconvenient for you. So we'll just suppress your period and you can have one period a year. That is insane. Your endocrine system has an effect on other systems of the body. It can affect your mood. It can affect your bone density. It can affect your libido. It can affect everything, right? And so when you suppress that system, when you tell the system, no, don't ovulate, don't release an egg, when you tell the system, no, don't shed the uterine wall, that has a side effect. Every suppression from a medication, whether it's birth control or some other kind of medication, every single medication has a side effect. And so some of you guys know that we had the opportunity to watch a showing of The Business of Birth Control. It is from the producers that made The Business of Being Born. Both are great movies, or both, I would consider them documentaries. The Business of Being Born was produced by Ricky Lake, if you guys remember the talk show host Ricky Lake, and Abby Epstein. And so they were showing home birth and midwifery and doulas, which is very interesting. When I knew I wanted to have a natural birth, I watched the movie and it was educational. And then this new movie that just launched is The Business of Birth Control. And it goes into how birth control got developed. It goes into the side effects. It goes into, unfortunately, some really sad stories of some young women that lost their lives from clots from the second generation birth control, like Yaz and Yasmin and the NuvaRing, where the hormones were so off balance that strokes occurred, blood clots occurred, blood clots in the brain being a stroke, blood clots in the heart being a heart attack or a myocardial infarction, blood clots in the lung being a pulmonary embolism. So a young woman in their 20s or their 30s or their 40s or whatever should not be keeling over from any of those complications, right? And with the FDA knowing, the Food and Drug Administration knowing, the same people that are pushing the certain shots, and again, I'm trying not to get kicked off all of these channels, but they knew that there are risks, right? And a lot of these risks are coming out, and people are becoming aware that when you take something foreign, a chemical or a metal or a hormone that your body didn't make, and you put it into your system, it's going to have an effect. They call it side effects, right? And in this case, some of these women have perished. I have women who've been on birth control since they were 16. For acne, acne is that is not in my opinion, it is not a solution for acne. It is not a solution to regulate your period. It's not a solution. It's not a solution. It's too risky of an option. And so these second generation birth control pills, because the first generation birth control pills, the patents ran out. And when a patent runs out, then anybody can make it. And your profits do what? If you're a drug company, your profits go down. So with the second generation drugs, if you have a new patent, then you can charge and you can have a piece of the market and make money, right? And so at the end of the day, these businesses are so powerful and they make so much money at the risk of what? At the risk of death, at the risk of stroke, at the risk of infertility. And so I was thinking about one of my cases. I had a lady in her 40s and she had been on birth control since she was 15. That's a really long time. And we were working with her and we were helping her. And actually, when she worked with us, she didn't feel the need to be on oral contraceptives anymore. And we were helping her endocrine system naturally with whole food supplementation and balancing out her body naturally. And a lot of her symptoms, she had polycystic ovarian syndrome. So that's where the ovaries grow cysts. The ovaries just don't grow hood ornaments to grow bubbles, right? The uterus doesn't just grow fibroids because it's fun, right? The body is doing that a lot of times to protect the area. In the fibroid, there could be parasites. In the fibroid, there could be chemicals or heavy metals. So the body does that for a reason. If you can find the reason, in our office, we find the reason from quantum nutrition testing. And some of the practitioners on here, they do the same, right? We look for the cause of the problem. And when you can find the cause of the problem and you handle the cause of the problem, the symptoms go away and the problem goes away, which is amazing, right? And so with this young woman, she was on oral contraceptives for a really long time, and we were balancing her body out with whole food nutrition. And so at one point she didn't come to her appointment and she didn't show up, and she was a very consistent person and she really loved holistic healthcare. And I wondered where she went. And then it was months later, I'd call and I told her I was worried about her. And then finally, months later, she came back in the office and I'm like, where have you been? And she's like, I had a stroke. And it was one of the first cases I've ever seen of a young person, right? You think of strokes in the elderly, right? Someone in their 60s or their 70s or their 80s. And so it was the first time I had heard of someone young having a stroke. And I'm like, oh my gosh, you had a stroke? And she goes, yeah, they think it's from all my decades of use of birth control. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that makes sense. I'm like, oh my, are you okay? And so we worked to clean up her body, to detox the nasty chemicals that of decades of birth control were in her system. And we looked to strengthen her system, and she did really, really well. But I was taken back as a physician. I was like, oh my gosh, where have you been? Holy crap, you had a stroke. Like, how does someone in their 30s have a stroke? Like, that was unheard of to me, right? It's just like, it's unheard of people just dropping dead, like sudden adult death syndrome. To me, like, is this like a bad joke? Like, people just keel over dead? No, there's a cause. There's a cause to that. And so if you know a young woman that has PMS, we just have to figure out why her hormones are unbalanced. The medical treatment is oral contraceptives, hormones. The natural handling, I don't want to say treatment because we don't treat or cure. The natural handling is figure out what imbalanced the hormones. Is it that they eat a whole bunch of crap, right? They eat a whole bunch of sugar, and sugar pulls minerals out of the body. Is it that they got exposed to chlorine because it's in our water supply? Is it that you love to bleach your house and you clean the bathrooms and you clean the shower? And this is really embarrassing to tell you, but I used to help my mom clean the house. That's not the embarrassing part. But then I figured, I could multitask by cleaning the shower while I'm in the shower. And it's okay to spray the chemicals because it'll just rinse away because the shower's on. But I didn't think about me standing in the shower and absorbing the chemicals through inhaling the chemicals because of the off gassing, touching the chemicals with my bare hands. You guys do that too. I know some of you guys are cleaning your bathrooms with bare hands and touching chemicals, and then standing in the shower and the chemicals are hitting my feet, right? So you absorb what you touch. If you're cleaning with bleach and your hand is touching the bleach rag or the sponge, you are absorbing the bleach. If you inhale it, if you can smell the bleach, you're inhaling the bleach, right? And that will imbalance the thyroid. That will cause disturbances in hormonal balance, and the person will have symptoms like PMS. If your kid has PMS, there's a cause, and we can help you find it. PCOS, so polycystic ovarian syndrome. Again, syndromes are not normal, just like PMS is not normal. Why do we keep calling it syndromes with female stuff? Why is it a syndrome? So why did the ovaries make cysts? Why did that occur? Like, did they just get bored one day and just make extra like decorations? I don't think so. I think something irritated the ovaries. Was it all the preservatives in our food? Was it all the chemicals in our air? Was it all the chemicals in our water? Many people tell me that they used really toxic laundry detergent, dryer sheets, which we know have been linked to cause imbalances in hormones. They've cleaned their house. I used to clean my house with Pine Sol. Pine Sol is not good for you. Fabuloso is not good for you, right? Those are toxic chemicals. That they eat synthetic foods, right? They eat foods that have chemicals, like this fake soy beef hot dog. What do they call it? Fake food. I don't even know the name, right? So like the fake meat food, that's not good. That will imbalance hormones. And then moms, I think moms get put in position. They're like, okay, well, my daughter's getting older and she is active and we don't want to have an oops, right? And so I've had this conversation with adult women and I'm like, look, like you don't need to have a oops. You know how babies are made. Please don't make me explain it on all these lives, right? You know how babies are made. And either this act happens or it doesn't happen, right? But it's interesting. I think some women are not educated and they don't understand how babies are made. And I'm like, this is a basic concept that your sons and daughters should understand, right? And so if you don't want babies to happen, because that's the end result of that act, then women have a small window for that to happen. So there's places like the Fertility Awareness. They're a group of educators that will teach you how to track your temperatures. And when your temperature spikes, you have changes in hormones. When your cervix or certain fluids change, you're more likely to be fertile and get pregnant during those times. And so contraceptions like old school condoms or similar devices can help against pregnancy. So there's education that females can have, and just like many, 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 many other topics, that education is suppressed in our society. Like back in the day, I took home economics. I'm happy I took home economics because I liked learning how to cook stuff. I liked learning how to sew stuff. But for some reason, they took that out. I took metal shop. I took woodworking. Not because I'm going to sit there and build whatever, but I know now how to use a file or sandpaper. I know how to use tools. Like these are basic skills that our kids need to know. And if you're a parent and your kid does not know how to cook anything, all right, let's get them learning how to make basic food. If you don't teach them, who's going to teach them? When I was in college, I was in the dorms and I would cook a lot of my meals because the cafeterias the quality of the food there is very low because they keep it cheap, right? And so I'd be cooking dinner, and a lot of times I would do, I had the little tiny dorm refrigerator and the little tiny freezer. And so I would get like frozen vegetables. So like a vegetable medley or frozen green beans or frozen broccoli. And then I would get frozen meat, real meat, and I would cook that. And it was super fast. I could have dinner in 20 minutes faster than if I walked my happy butt to the cafeteria and back. And it was higher quality food. And so I'd have some eggs sometimes. It just depended on what I wanted. And it was very, very interesting because I had ladies in my dorm that would ask me. They'd be like, "Lisa, how do I make pasta?" And being Italian, I'm like, "What do you mean you don't know how to make pasta? Like, I've been making pasta since I was old enough to reach the oven, like the stovetop. Like, how do you not know how to make pasta?" And I'm like, "Okay." And so for me, in my early 20s to hear that, it was mind blowing. And I'm like, "Okay, well, you get the saucepan and you fill it with water until it's boiling, and then you throw the pasta in for about 8 to 10 minutes, and then, check to see if it's done. And how do you know it's done?" I'm like, "Oh my gosh. How do you make eggs? How do you cook meat? How do you prepare dinner?" I'd have guys on the floor below me, and I gave them cookie classes because they wanted to barbecue and they wanted to make food for themselves, but no one taught them. And so please, 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 no matter what your kid's age is, please teach them to cook something. If you do not teach them, how are they going to learn, right? And so a lot of college students, they're eating ramen noodles, which is horrible, high salt, bad salt, high preservatives, MSG, which is a neurotoxin, like very, very little nutrition. It is not good for you. Mac and cheese, high carbs, high processed foods, not good for you. And then pizza, right? Like pizza delivery people were everywhere on college campuses because it was fast and it was cheap and it tasted good, but not the greatest food to eat. So please teach your kids how to eat. And then when they learn how to do that later in life, when they're living on their own or they're in a relationship or they get married, that knowledge transfers over to their family. There's way too many kids that I meet that they're ordering off the children's menu all of the time, or their parents are cooking regular dinner, adult dinner, and then the kids are eating whatever, chicken nuggets, mac and cheese, pizza, hot dogs. That is not food. Now, if you have it every now and then, totally fine, but fruit, that's not food, right? So, this documentary, The Business of Birth Control, has a lot of good data. I'll just give you a little disclaimer. There's two vagina shots, one vagina from the 70s and one vagina from now. And they were showing women the cervix, which is human anatomy. So just a heads up, if you want younger people to see it, there is some nudity, but not sexual nudity, just anatomy nudity. So there you go. I think it's okay. And it's important to know that, and it's important for young women to know that birth control has side effects, that all medications have side effects. And so when I was at the University of Florida as a student, I rode for the university's crew team. And I had weird periods. I had always had irregular periods. I would have a period, skip a month, have a period, skip 2 months, have a period, skip 3 months, have a period, skip 6 months. Like my periods were super irregular, and that's how they were always been. And my mom took me to the OBGYN that she went to, and she ran blood work, and she looked at my vagina, and guess what she told me? She told me, come back when you have a real problem. And I'm like, what do you mean? I'm like, this is a problem. Like, I'm supposed to have a cycle every month and I don't. And it's very irregular and I never know when it's coming, which is kind of stressful. And she's like, yeah, well, you're lucky. You just don't have to have a period. And I'm like, I'm not lucky. Something's wrong with my body. And she didn't have an answer for me. And then she acted like I wasted her time. And it was very discouraging. And I know a lot of women, they have issues. And because a lab panel doesn't show it and imaging doesn't show it, and they can't find a weird number on a test or a weird image, that they want to tell the person it's in their head, or don't worry about it. Or so if you have a symptom, it means something is not right in your body, right? It doesn't mean you're going to die tomorrow. It just means something's not right. And then we look for the cause of why it's not right. In quantum nutrition, we look to see, is it a chemical that you got exposed to? It's practically impossible to not be exposed to chemicals, right? They're in our air, they're in our water, they're in our food. It could be heavy metal. It could be a parasite. It could be a bacteria. It could be mold, right? So mold in a female system increases estrogen. Increased estrogen leads to cancers. Excess estrogen in a male body causes female tendencies, right? The guy can make moobs, man breasts. The guy's testosterone will be lowered because they have mold exposure, which increases estrogen. If you're eating soy and it's not fermented, that will increase estrogen. If you're eating these Franken meats, these fake meats, these Wonder Burgers or whatever the heck they're called, you're getting plant-based estrogen, right? And so I was put on oral birth control. And so being in college, I was like, all right, well, that seems convenient for obvious reasons, right? But then I took it and I didn't like how I felt. I felt very emotional, like out of control. My breasts increased in size. So some of you guys are like, yeah, that's amazing. I'm like, no, it wasn't amazing because I was an athlete and I didn't want to have extra on my chest that didn't belong there. I gained 20 pounds. And so I took this pill, I took these hormones for 2 months thinking it was the solution to irregular periods. And yes, my period came when it was supposed to come, but was it a period or was it just breakthrough bleeding, right? If the pill suppresses your ovaries function, it suppresses the ability of the ovary to release an egg down the fallopian tube and into the uterus for future baby making. I don't know how to describe that. For future reproduction, I guess is a better word. And that pill suppresses your ovaries function. What is the effect? If it's a month of suppression or 2 months of suppression or 6 months of suppression or a year of suppression or 5 years of suppression or 10 years of suppression, or in my patient's standpoint, like 20 years of suppressing the ovaries function, what does that do to the body? In her case, she had a stroke from it. Can I prove that it was from that? No, I can't prove, but it is a side effect of oral contraceptives, right? So after 2 months of feeling like a crazy person and gaining weight and getting bigger breasts and feeling like a crazy person, I stopped taking it. I threw them away. That was it. I was done. How many women don't have that realization? How many women do it anyways because they're told by their doctors who they respect that is the solution to their acne. That is the solution to their irregular periods. That is the solution to their cramps, to their fibroids, to their cysts, to their everything. And to me, it is not the solution. It is the suppression that leads to other symptoms. With one of the worst side effects, in my opinion, is infertility. So you take a woman in her 16, in her early 20s, maybe her early 30s, and she doesn't want to have a family because she was taught by our society, and I'm included, that you go to college. You go to college, you get an education, you get a degree, and then you work in your degree, you're a successful businesswoman, and then you have a family, right? And so that's what I did. So if you were to ask me in my early 20s if I wanted to have kids, I've been like, I don't think so. It wasn't real to me because one, the relationships I were in were not relationships or are conducive to families. And two, my headspace was I'm going to be a doctor. I'm not thinking about kids. Like I'm going to help people, right? So, super important movie. It is. I don't agree with every single thing in it, but I think it does help to educate. I think it does help to shine a light on this problem. I appreciate the bravery of these women to go against the big pharma companies and the FDA. I appreciate the parents that are trying to change the labels to really reflect what are the side effects of these drugs. And I think as a society, we have to push forward even more as parents, as aunts, as educators, as human beings to really teach how the body works, to really teach how the systems work, to really teach what health is, because most people they don't know what health is, right? So I'm gonna answer some questions. So, anyways, I was gonna say this documentary, the business of birth control, is going to be complimentary. Right now, it's $14 to watch it, which is totally worth it. It's going to be complimentary tomorrow. So, if you go to the business of birth control, if somebody can post the link, you go to the business of birth control. And you enter your information, you will get a free link tomorrow. So I think it's complimentary. And those of you that were there, let me know from Wednesday to the weekend. And so at least get the download so you can watch that yourself. You can show your nieces if it's appropriate. You can show your kids. You can show your spouse. You can show your partner. And you can get more education on one, how the female body works, and two, every single drug has a side effect. All right, so I'll take some questions here. My doctor said clots were very rare. Yeah, so they're not rare. They happen. Let's see. Most female OBs are rude. Yeah, mine was rude, and I haven't been back since. Doctors never told us about the side effects of birth control. Doctors also don't tell you about the side effects of drugs. In the majority of the cases I work on, there's some prescription drugs that I don't know all the side effects. So I will literally go to drugs.com. I will look up the medication with the patient in the room and I will read all the side effects. And oftentimes while I'm reading the list of side effects, the patient's telling me, yes, I have that. Yes, I have that symptom. Yes, I have that side effect. Yes, I have that side effect. Yes, I have that side effect. So my question is is the medication that they're taking causing these side effects? And is the medication they're taking fixing the problem? I have never seen a medication fix the problem. So I'm not saying, so some people think, oh, well, you're a holistic doc and you think medication is bad and you think medical doctors are bad and you think it's all bad. No, 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 no. I don't think it's bad. I'm on planet Earth because a very talented surgeon did emergency surgery on my mother, emergency C-section surgery. I'm alive because of that. When I broke my arm as a kid, I was very happy there was a talented orthopedist on staff that could set my bone, right? So I'm definitely not against medicine, but I am against prescribing medications that have side effects to suppress a symptom that could have been handled in a natural way. That's what I am against. Robin says, yep, I took the pill for so many years because of my PCOS, and then it took over a year to get pregnant. Yeah. So it took a year for her to get pregnant. There's people that it takes like multiple years to get pregnant because of the negative effect of that. Some companies are guilty of the C issues too. Yep. So there's a lot of big pharma that are producing certain popular injections. Sunny says, I had a hysterectomy 12 years ago. Now I have a prolapsed bladder. What can I do to make it better? I can feel my bladder hanging out some days. Yeah. So, Sunny, that happens. It's an interesting progression. The pattern that I see is repeated many times. And the pattern that I see is a female has some kind of female type of some kind of symptom, right? So they have the irregular period or they have cramps or they're later in life and they're going through menopause. Menopause just means menses stop. It doesn't mean hot flashes. It doesn't mean low libido. It doesn't mean dryness. It doesn't mean any of that. It just means your period stops, right? Your ovaries aren't releasing eggs. So we think. And so they have some kind of symptom. And the treatment, it's the same pattern over and over again. The treatment is, okay, well, you have the symptoms, so we're going to put you on birth control to handle this symptom. Or, you're going through the change now and you're making less hormones, so we're going to give you bioidentical hormones. I don't know how that labeling even occurred. A bioidentical hormone does not mean that you took something out of your body and then you ate it, right? Like, to me, bio is natural or biology. Identical is the same in hormone. So the name of it seems like it would be you are taking hormones that you make, but it's not true. They didn't take hormones out of you to give you the hormones. That wouldn't make any sense. It would make a little bit more sense, but it doesn't. That's not what happens. Is you're taking a chemical compound, or you're taking a hormone from pregnant horse urine, by the way, or you're taking hormones from a pig and you're putting it in your system. Now, some of these medications have dyes in them. They have heavy metals in them. So I've had women, they're heavy metal toxic from the medication that they're taking. They have side effects. They can increase the risk of multiple cancers. They can increase the risk of hemorrhaging. They can increase the risk of so many different things, right? And so to me, whether you are childbearing age and you have female issues, or you are menopausal, going through the normal change, it's a normal change. Your periods are supposed to stop at a certain point, supposedly. I don't even know if that's true, because look at Noah and his wife, right? They had some mileage on them. And I see the pattern is, if female has female issues, they get put on birth control. They come off it maybe to get pregnant. They go back on. And then they seem to, for whatever reason, like get convinced later that they don't need their ovaries anymore. And then they get convinced that they don't need their uterus anymore. So they have a total hysterectomy. But you have to keep in mind that we don't have spare parts. So if you take out the uterus, if you think of the uterus, right? If you take off the uterus and then you have the bladder here and you remove the uterus, you cut ligaments that are supposed to keep that bladder up, right? And you're changing the structure of the body. You cut out, you remove organs. That's like me, I don't know, taking a crucial part of your car out and saying, oh, your car will be fine. Like that's not the case. And so the pattern is, female has issues, they get put on oral birth control. They're told, hey, you're not going to have any more babies. So we're going to take out your ovaries. We're going to take out your uterus. And then the bladder starts to prolapse. A prolapsed bladder means it's coming out the vagina, right? And women have to push it back in, or it scrapes their panties, and that hurts. I have seen women have the surgery where they staple the bladder back up. They're stapling it to something. If there's no uterus, there's no wall, like what are they stapling it to? But because the structure is so weakened, because the integrity, the nutritional value, the collagen, the structure has been compromised, the bladder falls back down. So I had one case, she had her bladder tacked up, and back then I'm like, bladder tacked up? Like, what do you mean? Like horse tack? Like, what do you mean tacked back up? Like a thumbtack? Like, that sounds horrible. And then it fell back down. So they wanted to redo the surgery and reattach the bladder. And I'm like, that's horrible. So then with the quantum nutrition testing, we test to see, why is the bladder weak? Like, it needs to be strong. Well, what would strengthen it? Okay, well, organs and glands need nutrients, and they need vitamins, and they need minerals. So what if I could talk to her body and figure out through quantum testing to see the exact right minerals that the body needs to repair the bladder wall? And that's what happened. And so she just took some whole food supplements that were the exact right nutrients that her body needed, and her bladder regained its strength and held itself up and had normal function. And she didn't have to have it tacked back up. She didn't have to have bladder surgery again. And it was amazing. And she's like, are you kidding me? She's like, I just took whole food nutrition. I just took nutrients. I just took vitamins, and my bladder like re-stabilized. I'm like, yeah, that's what's supposed to happen. If you hurt yourself, If you need to repair your lungs or your heart or your blood or your kidneys or your whatever, remember you have cells in your body that break down organs and tissues and build back organs and tissues. And that's constantly happening, right? So your lungs every 7 years are completely regenerated. Your red blood cells every 120 days, they're making new red blood cells. So your body's constantly building itself up and tearing itself down. If you're putting good nutrition in your body, you're going to have a good effect, right? You're going to have nice skin. Like a patient today was like, "Oh, Dr. Palmer, you have nice skin. What's your skin routine?" Do you guys really want to know my skin routine? It's not that impressive, right? It's put on the healthiest organic makeup that I can find, which do have makeup on, right? And then I use stuff like this, like dermacolonizer or coconut oil or jojoba oil. And I use that to take off makeup, but also put a little bit on. Do I do it every day? No. Do I use fancy creams or fancy cleansers or toners? Or no, I don't. But I know what I eat has an effect on my skin, which is our largest organ. I know it has an effect on my digestion. I know it has an effect on my organ health. I know it has an effect on everything, right? So you get good nutrition. Good nutrition in means good health on the outside and the inside. Bad nutrition in means failing organs, failing glands, rotting organs, and falling down organs. Okay, so thank you, Tiffany, for posting the link for that movie. Sunny says, I was taking collagen C for my prolapsed bladder. It helped, but constipated me. Interesting. So I would look, Sunny, to see what else can be done. So maybe you need some digestive support. Maybe your gut health is compromised. Maybe there's a good probiotic or a good, maybe your liver's a little toxic. Lola said, just joining. Lisa, your opinion on annual pap smear. There's the question. So I am not an OBGYN. I don't play one on TV. And I'm really not interested in looking at vaginas all day. Birthing babies could be cool, but it's pretty messy. Pap smear. So it depends on your history, right? So like if you have had cervical cancer, if you have some weird bleeding, if you have some weird symptoms, then I think it's a good idea to have an expert look in that area and see what's happening. But then I would take it a step further and I would want to find out why. So if you have an irregular cervix, why is it irregular? If you have polyps, why are you making polyps? If you have cysts on your ovaries, why are you making cysts or fibroids? I would want to know why, and that's what we do. We look for the cause. So it depends on your history. It depends on what's going on. I think vaginal ultrasounds can give some really good data. And oftentimes, if someone's having pain or bleeding, it can be a cyst or it can be a fibroid. So cysts tend to pop on their own. They hurt like hell. But again, I want to find out, why is the body making cysts? Why is the body making fibroids? I had a patient, she had a grapefruit-sized fibroid in her uterus, and she was only in her 20s. And I said, look, she goes, look, I'm supposed to have surgery next week, but I really don't want to have surgery. And I said, well, if you don't want to have surgery, then why don't we do some quantum testing and figure out why your body is making such big fibroids? It's probably trying to protect you from something. She goes, well, that makes a lot of sense. And so we started working on her fibroids and they started shrinking. And she went from like excruciating periods where she had to stay home and not move to living her life, right? I had a sad case where a woman had fibroids and we found out certain foods would make her pain worse, like alcohol and sugar and stuff like that, which she liked because who doesn't like that? And her OB convinced her to, it's just a minor surgery. It's no big deal. We'll just go in and we'll cut the fibroids out and no big deal. Surgery, when you go under general anesthesia, it is a big deal. They knock you out. You are unconscious. It is a big deal. And so routine fibroid removal resulted in this person's death, right? What do I think happened? I think that the fibroid was the body's way of holding on to toxic chemicals and metals and parasites. And when that is opened up, what happens? It gets released into the system. And so, some of these procedures are talked about in that they're not a big deal, or like a hysterectomy. Like Lola saying, hysterectomy is so common now that when I went through menopause, I could not find one woman that went through menopause all had hysterectomies. Yeah. So that is very, very common. Like I'll ask a female, like, okay, when did your period stop? Well, I don't really know because all the parts were taken out. And it's weird as women because it's like adopted in our society. And this could be a whole other documentary, right? Like women losing parts. It could be a whole other movie on like, why are women losing their ovaries and their uterus, right? Oh, well, you're not going to have any more babies. You don't need that. It's like ripping the oven out of your kitchen. Like but worse. Like, I don't even know a great example. And so a lot of women tell me, I don't know when I went through menopause because I don't have a period because I don't have organs. I don't see them doing that as often in the male world, right? They don't say to a guy, well, hey, you don't plan on having more kids, right? So let's just chop your testicles off. Like, that's crazy. I actually have heard that. I had a patient and he had a mass in his testicle and he had just had a baby. And his doctor said, well, you just had a baby and you might have cancer. They didn't biopsy it, so they don't know what it is or was. So they convinced him to remove his testicle. And I'm thinking, are you kidding me? Like, there's a mass. It's probably, usually we see masses are coagulated parasites. Like, they like to hang out in a group. And so they convinced this young man, he was only in his 20s, to remove his testicle. No other symptoms, just a mass. And I'm like, oh my goodness. And so then he became my patient. And I said, well, look, let's do whatever we can to get your body healthy and help you with your recovery. He goes, okay, but I have a follow-up appointment with the surgeon. And I said, okay, well, it makes sense because they cut you. So it would make sense for them to recheck. And that surgeon convinced this guy in his 20s that he has another testicle. And now he has a young baby. So the responsible thing to do, because he could get testicular cancer in the other testicle, even though the first testicle, they never verified if it was cancer or not, was the responsible thing to do was to remove the other healthy testicle. Are you kidding me? Like, that's insane. Like, you're chopping off testicles. Like, but it seems more so a female thing. Like, oh, you have this problem, let's take out your ovaries. Oh, you have this problem, let's take out your uterus. Oh, you're this age, let's take those out. It's less, it's not as common in the male world, but I have had cases like that. And I'm like, oh my gosh, you just took off this guy's testicles, which is going to affect his testosterone, which, can you even imagine how that affects him emotionally? Like, oh my gosh, like, just craziness. All right. So a couple questions and then I got to run. Cindy says, I believe there are always class action lawsuits for the bladder mesh surgeries. Yes. Every kind of mesh, whether it is hernia mesh, bladder mesh, other meshes, there have had multiple lawsuits. Of course, there's multiple lawsuits for these women that have passed away from oral contraceptives. There's multiple lawsuits for basically every medication. That's why Big Pharma has huge legal funds to handle these lawsuits. And then, there's certain things that they make that you can't sue them at all for because they're protected. Lady Cat says, mine is from my colon. I passed a lot of parasites and now my stomach is messed up. I'm not quite sure how stomach messed up, like if you're nauseous or you're got to poop. If you got to poop, you need more drainage. Is Kegel exercise necessary or are women lacking from something? When I sneeze, I pee a little bit. I think, and could be a whole other live, but I think, including myself, that there's not a lot of good data on when you go through the delivery process and you have tearing and you or C-sections. I think there's way more that can be done. And it's kind of funny and it kind of is frustrating is that I wanted to do a vagina class. And so I actually bought a vagina model and wanted to teach more on like strengthening certain areas, stretching certain areas, what happens in childbirth and all that stuff. So maybe I'll get my vagina model down for a live and we'll get deeper. We'll talk more about that. Let's see. Oh my goodness. A couple more questions. Let's see. Oh no, I'm so sorry. It's good the parasites are being removed. Yeah, it's totally good that the parasites are being removed. I wonder what do they do with their parts? Yes, honey, I thought that. I'm like, when they take these ovaries and these uteruses out, what are they doing with that? You're right. Yeah. Let's see. Good. 58 years old for me, and no symptoms such as no hot flashes or anything, I believe, because I had sought proper treatment via natural health. Good job. Very well done. Yep. Crazy surgeons. That guy never started. He never did a program with me because I didn't even know what to say to him. I was like, oh my gosh, you had both your testicles removed. Like he was embarrassed. He was mortified. I mean, like, did you lose your man card if you lost part of your man parts? I don't know. I feel horrible. I consider it a failed case just because I feel like I didn't have the chance to educate him more. And he was so afraid. And so, I mean, the surgeon told him, like, you could get testicular cancer and you have a baby, so you better take off your other testicle. I'm like, oh my gosh. That's like saying you're going to have a cataract later in life. So why don't we just go ahead and take your eyeball out? Like, I don't know. Okay, so many topics. I'm sure we can chat all night on female stuff, but I wanted to encourage you, watch the movie, watch the documentary, learn more. If we can help you with PMS, if we can help you with PCOS, if we can help you with irregular periods, if we can help you with clotty periods, heavy periods, irregular periods, skip periods, hot flashes, low libido, night sweats, you name it, we are happy to help you. You can go to drpalmerconsultation.com and I'm happy to do a workup on you, or one of my associates. We can do a workup on you and see what is the cause of the symptoms. What can we do to help you, and how do we get your body to heal naturally? I'm Dr. Lisa Palmer, Dr. Mama Bear. Thank you for joining me tonight, and happy female health. Good night.